Oh, blimey. How do I start this one? Yeah, so I've been doing some more experimenting with methods of recording. And because I didn't want to dub over a video of myself, I decided to see how it sounded with the mask on. And it sounds muffled, so sorry. Fans are annoying. They ruin everything. And I firmly believe that they are why Nintendo refused to admit that the new Breath of the Wild era of games are a reboot. The fan backlash would be insane. And back in 2016, you had better believe I would be on that bandwagon. I've never been good with change. But time has passed, I've matured, we've had a second game, and I've found a new interest in King Arthur. No, no, I'm not going into the obvious story parallels, but as legends, there are some really interesting things to compare.
No, not in a comparison is the thief of joy sort of way, but more of a these two things have interesting parallels way.
Hmm. Okay, let's start with a few objections you may have.
Nintendo have said it's the same continuity.
And I've already stated that they have a pretty good reason, a solid, strong reason to be scared of admitting it. More than that, actions speak louder than words. So tell me, where did they place the games in the timeline? Echoes of Wisdom got a timeline placement, and that talk of there being a timeline convergence or what, a fourth parallel timeline? Come on. Come on. Okay, so next, how does the lore fit? Well, it doesn't. So many little references contradict that it's kind of insane. But these references fit so nicely into my hypothesis that it just seems planned, deliberate.
Nintendo want to leave the mystery for the fans to have fun solving.
I'm still figuring out my exact thoughts on this mindset.
We hate that Marvel symbiotes have a cosmic origin now, when they were just so good as lone chaotic factors in the universe.
I do have an analogy though. Reading a murder mystery where anyone could be the killer. There are hints of animal element and supernatural elements. And at the end, the butler gets arrested. No particular reason. It's just a cliche. But it's never proven that but it's never proven that the butler is the killer. We never get a true answer, and the animal and supernatural loose ends are never tied up, or maybe not even addressed. Can the reader solve this? Is there something to solve? I mean, maybe that could actually be fun. Um, but what if the author never decided on a killer because they wanted to leave it up to the reader? Well, then there is no bloody answer. What's the point of a puzzle with no solution? This is where I struggle to find the line. There needs to be a killer for there to be a purpose to the mystery. But that supernatural element? Well, that could be fun to explore as fans. Was the butler possessed? Was the butler body swapped? So an innocent man in a guilty body has been arrested? That. Actually, I want to write that now.
Go ahead give it a try yourselves. We'd love to read someone else's take on it. It could be really fun.
Okay. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. History. Yeah, I hated history lessons back in school because it was always about the ancient Greeks, the Tudor dynasty, the Second World fucking War. It's like that's all the schools were interested in teaching us. It was so annoying. And there's so much more to history that can be explored. Not only different cultures, but different time periods of the same fucking country. And what we're about to go into now. What does King Arthur bring to mind? The sword in the stone, Excalibur. Excalibur, Excalibur. Great big stone castles. Knights in shining armor. A forbidden love between Lancelot and Queen Guinevere. Ooh la la. And the final battle against Mordred. Yeah, no. King Arthur, who likely did exist, even though it might have been under a different name, was around in 550 AD, a good 500 years before great big stone castles became a thing. Plate armor did not exist yet. Mordred was likely an ally who died alongside Arthur. And Lancelot, well, he was added much later by a French author. See, King Arthur was incredibly popular in France. I don't know the exact time, that later. So many staples of the genre.
Because at this point, Arthurian legend is basically a genre of its own.
Were added later by the French.
And what's more, there were two swords. The sword in the stone and Excalibur, which would originally have been called Caliburn, but the French changed it to Excalibur. So, there you are.
There isn't all that much to go on for the real figure of King Arthur, because at the time, Britain was undergoing... It was in a little bit of a chaotic situation. Britain had long been occupied by Rome, but they had collapsed shortly before the events of this legend, pulling out and leaving the Britons all on their own. They took their infrastructure, education, most of their language, and so on. And anything else was probably lost, as the Germanic tribes saw this juicy little island with their tin deposits and started rubbing their grubby little hands together. This was the start of the Dark Ages. Dark here meaning unknown, not permanently overcast or whatever people think it is. Because there are no written records for quite a few years after this point. We do have reason to think that King Vortigern hired Saxon mercenaries to help.
Wait, Saxons?
Yeah.
Saxons as in the Anglo-Saxon invasion.
Yep.
The same Saxons from which originated the name England from Anglerland.
You know it. Skipping to the point, there is a certain point. Okay. Skipping to the point, at a certain time, this invasion just kind of stopped. Someone managed to challenge the invaders about midway across the island, drive them back, and even send a few packing back home. Oral history claims that this was all achieved by the man we call Arthur. Oh my god, what a tangent that was. I wonder how much I'll have to cut out. The point I want to make is that the legend we have of King Arthur came about from very little recorded history. It's all oral history and things extrapolated from later poets and so on. There was this one poem in, I think, the 6th century where they were talking about this great, amazing king who did all these incredible things and he was great to his people and generous and kind. And he could not hold a candle to Arthur. The source I got that from suggested that this was phrased this way because everybody already knew how incredible Arthur was. Everybody knew about this legend, so they didn't have to clarify. They could just drop the name in there and people would get it. Showing that even though there's no written recorded history, Arthur as a figure was just taken for granted. I went off on an ad-lib tangent there, so this is going to be an awkward way to join things up. And the legend has changed drastically over the near 2 millennia since the actual events. And I claim so has the Legend of Zelda over at least 10 millennia. They mention that in the game, that the events of a legend happened 10,000 years ago, which means it's been at least 10,000 years between Ganon's rise, that one time. So, assuming the rest of the games in the timeline are canon, they would have happened before that. So, 10,000 years. 14,000 years. Who knows? Okay. I want to clarify that this reboot doesn't actually decanonize or expel the previous games. They are just legends based likely on real events within the world of Hyrule. And I plan to explain how this works using actual historical methods, using King Arthur, using various religions. There's a lot that can be used from the exploration of Judeo-Abrahamic religions to justify bloody antibiotics. To using actual historical methods to justify this. I actually think this might be more exciting than actually insisting on the original timeline. This is going to be your induction into being a history nerd. So I'm thinking of splitting this up into a few parts, all so I can fully explore the various games and their potential origins and growth over the years within the world of this new reboot. But rather than digging fully into one right now, because it's been going for like 18 minutes and I kind of want to make a few shorter videos, I'm just going to give you a little taster. In Tears of a Kingdom, we get a bunch of side quests from a legendary thief, Misko, who I believe was first introduced in Breath of the Wild's DLC in order to drop off various canonically uncertain artifacts. His treasures are mostly, if not all, items stolen from Hyrule Castle post-Calamity, and they consist of things like a replica of Majora's Mask, a replica of the Fierce Deity equipment and sword, Wind Waker Link's PJs. replicas specifically. Why does the royal family of Hyrule have replicas of items from Termina, which may or may not actually exist in this world, or any world, depending on how you interpret the events of that game? How do they even know about Wind Waker Link's pajamas? It's a crazy small irrelevant detail, especially considering he almost definitely ran around in the green tunic for the entirety of his adventure. How do they know about events from 3 different timelines? Because none of them actually happened as portrayed in the games. That's why. I don't have an explanation yet as to how the legend of Majora's Mask entered the Breath of the Wild era Hyrule. Could have been a neighboring nation with their own myths and legends. Could have been a war, and like this tale of Majora's Mask is actually propaganda to hide the fact that maybe Hyrule invaded. Or maybe Ocarina of Time Link did go there, did have some adventures. And the Majora's Mask and Fierce Deity just grew out of retellings of said adventures. But Wind Waker is kind of an easy one to explain. Yeah. Yeah, it would have come from a tectonically induced local flood. Plain and simple. There are myths of global floods all around the globe. Mesopotamia had one. China had one involving the Naga, which was not a racial slur. Half water serpent monster thing. I might look into that and re-record, and so on. An actual global flood is physically impossible. There are many videos online to briefly talk about it, but there are many, many, many issues with the physics of how that would work that just it never happened. It couldn't happen.
Hey, Christians, calm down. You can still say God did it, but without a literal miracle, a global flood is physically impossible.
But if we were to take every myth at face value, then a global flood has happened many, many times. More likely, it's that these myths came from retellings of local floods, which you could say destroyed people's entire worlds, as in all they knew, or just their entire lives. So let's say that either 1, there was a flood, or 2, Hyrule started off by moving into a floodplain that had since dried up. 1, what we now call Hyrule was originally established in a basin below or around sea level. And that through erosion or an earthquake, water began to pour in and fill up, completely flooding the Hyrule they knew at the time. The thing is, if it was early on, a lot of kingdoms start small. So it could well have just been like one city that's just got completely flooded. And maybe a hero did rise during this time, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say Dragon's Roost was a later addition to the story. Why? Because I think another earthquake, possibly one that got rid of those floodwaters in the first place, would have raised Death Mountain from the earth at the same time as it caused the water to drain away. That's why we find sea salt on Death Mountain. 2, this earthquake happened, and then Hyrule was established. It's a little forced to have Wind Waker potentially be inspired by events at the founding of Hyrule, but given it's the first entry where we see Rito, even though Tears of the Kingdom clearly show them being there at the initial establishment of Hyrule, well, there's no reason why different legends couldn't split off from the same event in recorded history, or unrecorded history as it might have been. Wind Waker is an etiological myth. Wind Waker is an etiological myth for the Rito. That is a story made to try and explain the origin for something. Zeus is an etiology for lightning. And Genesis and the story of Genesis is an etiology why snakes don't have legs and why women
That joke could be easily misconstrued. We'll change it.
suffer during childbirth. As humans want to understand and explain the mysterious, it makes us feel safe. Like me with this video.
Yes, we are aware that we're doing exactly what Nintendo claimed they want us to do by using our imagination to have fun, filling in the gaps ourselves. That does not mean we accept their justification for not telling a coherent story.
Wind Waker could have been an etiology about why we find sea salt on top of a volcano.
Going back a bit, why is the Majora's Mask and the Fierce Deity equipment?
Why are they replicas? That is, instead of the originals.
They might never have existed, or they might just have been created from descriptions of what was originally there. Well, they either never existed, or they were made from the descriptions of what Link said or what later legends described. So you could say that what we see in game, both the Wild Era and Majora's Mask itself, they might not be what actually existed. Some artisan likely made them either to try and support the legend, or maybe just as props during storytelling, and over time they became considered precious relics. That was a little vague, not very detailed, but I do hope to go into far more detail for other games. Nothing too needless, nothing too weird, just forgotten my words because I was ad-libbing that too. I hope to go into more detail for the other games. Nothing too much, nothing too ridiculous. Just enough to make a compelling point. But I won't be rushing the series out because I'm going to need time to play the games. For footage, I could probably just watch them for the clues. But I'll probably also need to do some research, such as expanding my knowledge on etiological legends and so on. But here's a couple of hints for what's going to be coming. The depths in Tears of the Kingdom are, in Legends, the Twilight Realm or the Dark World. The Sky Islands are Skyloft. It's a pretty obvious one. The Rito could well be the Rito could well be the Loft Wings. The Zonai are the Zonai are the goddess Hylia and the three golden goddesses. That's going to be a fun one. And the Secret Stones, dumb name but whatever, are the Triforce. And can I just say I'm kind of pissed Secret Stones because I was working on my own King Arthur inspired story. This same sort of thing, where I'd be telling a series of legends but like maybe sometimes telling them twice, showing the reality of the legends and stuff, and it could be really fun, and it'd be an ongoing thing inspired by Zelda. And those secret stones, the teardrop shaped Magatama, like 10 years ago, I was already planning on that for this idea. It's taken me 10 years to really get going on it. It was kind of discovering the true history of King Arthur that inspired me to get back to it. So it's just kind of annoying that they got to the teardrop stones first. There was something else I wanted to say. I've kind of lost it though. Something about. So I guess what I've been trying to do here is to try and marry the idea of this new world while keeping the previous games relevant. Because the sad thing about a reboot is when you have to just discard everything that came before. You don't have to do that, and it could be really fun not to keep them all in legend, but in this really fun, realistic way. Cool. I'm working on the Alice retrospective. I feel like maybe I'll try and shift a bit to do more shorter videos instead of long retrospectives because it's easier to get out, and for my current awful health and anxiety, it's probably easier to work on shorter things than long running things, but that's not really what I wanted to do, so I'm working on that. But yeah, this one is in progress, and I'm probably going to go on to Ashina the Red Witch. I'm also going to try and upload a story completely irrelevant to all the videos I've been making, but I was writing it. It's kind of short. It's fun. There's this classic story of challenging death to a game in order to live. You actually keep your soul, stay in the living realm by beating death in a game. And I was playing with that, and I decided to try and add my own twist to it, and it ended up quite fun. So I'll probably upload that because otherwise it'll never get read. So that'll be my blog. I might try narrating it again, but I'm not much of a narrator. And that's that. Doodles.